Having troubles.
Are you stuck?
Yes. This thing is so low. All right. Welcome to the Historic Resources Commission meeting of August 15th. Is there some preliminary information we want to give?
Yep. Good evening and welcome to the August 15th Historic Resources Commission meeting. My name is Ellie Mullins, and with me is Lynn Braddock-Zollner, the Historic Resources Administrator, and Avery Kerner, Planner 2. Together, we will work alongside the chair to facilitate the meeting proceedings. Before we begin, I have just a few reminders to share. Tonight's meeting is being recorded and broadcast on the city's YouTube channel and cable channel 25. For those who are attending the meeting virtually, please remember to mute yourself when you are not actively speaking to help minimize distractions. When the chair calls for public comment on an item, anyone attending in person may approach the podium to speak. If you are attending the meeting virtually and would like to provide public comment on an item, please use the raise hand feature to be called upon. We also ask that everyone state their name before they speak to ensure everyone is able to follow along. And now I will turn the meeting back over to the chair.
Thank you. Now we'll take a roll call of the commission. Commissioner Haynes?
Here.
Commissioner Klein?
Here.
Commissioner Johnson?
Here.
Commissioner Meyer?
Here.
Commissioner Hawley? No, not here. All right. Moving to first item A, communications. Have we received any communications from other commissions, the State Historic Preservation Officer, or the general public?
You did receive one communication for this evening's meeting. It's the first public hearing item on your agenda, and that was added to the packet.
Thank you. Are there any disclosures of ex parte communications or declarations of abstentions for specific agenda items from commissioners? Commissioner Klein.
I had a brief conversation with a member of the Bricks and Sidewalks Committee.
Thank you. And do we have committee reports this month?
We did the Historic Marker Committee met and is working with a rubric to look at how to score new marker requests for the city. And they all have homework assignments and they're coming back, and we have a meeting that I believe it's either the first or second week in September. So they're working on both content and scoring that way, and then some ideas of size and type as well. And then also an update, we had an email discussion with the group for the Rice Dowdell markers, and we are working on context for those markers and have another meeting for those coming up as well.
Wonderful.
And then I think, Will, did you have a Brick Streets committee meeting?
They did have a meeting. I wasn't there. I believe Cece is here to fill us in at the appropriate time about that work.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Part B, consent agenda. We have several items on the consent agenda, and I would entertain a motion to approve those.
I'll move approval. Commissioner Klein?
Thank you, Commissioner Klein.
Commissioner Johnson, second.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Since we don't have any commissioners online, can we do the, I've never done this before. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Ha, so much easier. Thank you. Okay, at this time, we'll take any public comment. If there is anyone in the audience who would like to address the commission on items that are not on the agenda, now would be the time. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to Part D, public hearing items. First is the Brick Streets.
Thank you, commissioners. Give me just a second to get the screen share going. And just a quick heads up, I'm currently battling a double ear infection, so if I'm not projecting or unclear, you can give me a finger up and I'll speak a bit louder. The sound inside my head is much greater than what I'm projecting. So, again, thank you for having me today and considering the Brick Streets and Sidewalks policy. Your feedback provided at the last HRC meeting was very helpful, and the subcommittee appreciated hearing your concerns and considerations. I discussed your comments along with the general public comment on the draft with the staff working group and subcommittee, and both parties agreed that the draft would benefit from a few key revisions. The revised draft was published on the project website last month and brought before the Multimodal Transportation Commission on August 5th. These revisions are noted in the staff memo included in your agenda packet tonight, and the next few slides summarize 4 of the key changes that have been made to address the comments you gave last month. The most notable change is the area included in the sidewalk permissive map, previously referred to as the Brick Sidewalk Policy Applicability Map. This area identifies where the subcommittee thought brick sidewalks were most appropriate for restoration and reconstruction, and properties inside this area are able to utilize city contractors for brick sidewalk installation should their existing sidewalk not meet ADA standards. The subcommittee chose to add the original town site plat to the area included in the permissive map. On the left side of the screen, you see the same map that's on page 13 of the policy and included in your packet. All historic districts, UC overlay zoned areas, and the footprint of the original town site are shown in red. In the middle, I'm attempting to show the layering effect that makes up the permissive map. So you see the purple represents the original town site, blue the historic districts, and red the overlay zoning districts. And on the right, you're seeing the permissive map area in red, and then the existing conditions of the brick sidewalks, to the best of our knowledge, in the little blue lines. The subcommittee discussed this permissive map for a while at their last meeting and came to the conclusion that this mapped area, utilizing the original town site, historic districts, and UC overlay districts, was the best compromise when considering historic character, community concerns regarding equity and accessibility, and minimize subjectivity to the greatest extent possible. They also felt it important to retain and reinforce that should other areas want to be included in this map, they can seek out UC overlays or historic districts. Considering the permissive areas allow property owners the choice of brick sidewalks, which we know are at least twice as expensive as concrete sidewalks, and that the city has committed to the cost partnering through the ADA transition plan, the subcommittee felt it was prudent to limit the area included in the permissive map to the established historically significant areas for brick sidewalk preservation. MMTC discussed this map at their meeting on September 5th, but ultimately did not recommend any changes to the map. Another change to the policy that came from discussions with MMTC and general public comment was to clarify that existing stone panels are permitted so long as they meet ADA standards. They are still not a recommended material due to their high cost and fragile nature, but staff and the subcommittee softened the language a bit in this section to provide clarity for property owners who do choose to have bluestone or flagstone sidewalks in the public right-of-way. Lawrence Preservation Alliance provided helpful recommendations to this section of the policy, and they've been incorporated into the revised draft. The installation standards for brick sidewalks remains the same at 1/8 inch as the standard for deflections between bricks. However, the policy was edited slightly to clarify that this is the installation standard, not the standard the sidewalk is held to for the lifetime of the infrastructure. After the last HRC meeting, where this was a primary topic of conversation, staff reviewed dozens of community brick sidewalk policies and installation standards, as well as revisiting brick industry standards, and found that this specification is in line with best practice. The engineers and the staff working group also felt strongly that building our infrastructure to protect the public health, welfare, and safety was of the greatest priority, and changing the standard to be a greater deflection does not align with our need to build a safe pedestrian network. Additionally, in our last conversation, I think that folks may have been imagining a scenario where it was the property owner as the person reinstalling the brick sidewalk, and I don't imagine this will be the case for most properties, because by opting to self-repair, you're also opting out from the city's offer to cost partner and taking the entire cost of repair and installation onto yourself. Through the ADA transition plan, every property with a non-compliant sidewalk in the city will be given the opportunity to have a city repair and reinstall their sidewalk. Property owners inside the permissive mapped area are given the choice between brick and concrete sidewalk, and then the city will facilitate getting a contractor who will follow the specifications of the MSO design standards, also shown in section 1900 of this policy for brick. We want these standards to be in line with best practice, because best practice is safest and most durable, and that's what we need out of our sidewalk network. I have a couple engineers online as well if we want to talk about this further. Another change in the policy that came out of the last meeting with the brick subcommittee was to allow for property owners to maintain their brick sidewalk even after failing the ADA transition plan inspection. The inspection process for the ADA transition plan exists outside of the brick policy. However, this policy change clarified that property owners can continue to maintain their brick sidewalks even after the inspection takes place, identifying them as not meeting PRO-WAG standards. Now, the policy lays out that even after a property with a brick sidewalk outside the permissive map fails an inspection, they can still choose to do the repairs themselves. They just have to let the city know of their intent to do that work. This whole inspection and enforcement process is generally out of the scope of the brick policy, but it is a notable change on how the process will work alongside the ADA transition plan, and it was a question that was brought up at the HRC meeting last month. I also tried to build out the various if-then scenarios through a series of flowcharts that were included in your packet. And to speak to this change in the general process, you see it on the screen in front of you on the right side, the decision matrix for if someone has a brick sidewalk. Ultimately, it shows that if you have a brick sidewalk and the ADA transition plan is going to inspect your neighborhood soon, what are your options? It still follows the golden rule of if it's ADA compliant, you're good, no action needed, as you see on the far left side. But if your sidewalk isn't accessible, then you have some options to consider regarding material and if you want to utilize city cost partnering or not. And that's all I have for the highlighted policy changes. I did, however, want to quickly highlight that MMTC, the Multimodal Transportation Commission, reviewed the policy at their meeting earlier this month and provided a recommendation of approval to the City Commission with one conditional change. They recommended that the policy be edited to allow anyone in the city to be permitted to build a brick sidewalk, but clarified that they thought the brick sidewalk permissive map was appropriate for what properties may benefit from the cost partnering in city contractor through the ADA transition plan. So, if approved with that additional recommendation, this would allow any new construction out west, down south, wherever, to build a brick sidewalk in the right-of-way. They would just need to be built to the standards in this policy, and it would also mean that any property with a concrete sidewalk could opt to remove their concrete and replace it with bricks. They would just have to pay for that full cost out of pocket. They couldn't utilize city cost partnering, nor the model the ADA transition plan has approved. Their recommendation has not been integrated into the policy draft, and it doesn't have to impact how this body chooses to provide their recommendation. Ultimately, I'll take their recommendation along with your recommendation to the City Commission, and it'll be the City Commission who will provide a final recommendation on the policy ahead of when the administrative policy goes to the City Manager for final approval. With that being said, staff is requesting that you will consider recommending approval of the Brick Streets and Sidewalks policy and pass that approval on to City Commission, who will be considering the policy at their September 17th meeting. Should you have any recommended changes, I would also be happy to bring those to City Commission. And this September 17th date is different than I think the date I may have shown in the last HRC meeting. There was some agenda conflict, so we just had to move it back a couple days or a couple weeks. But thank you. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Commissioner Klein.
Cece, thank you so much for this, for especially pointing out changes, because it was hard to see that. Could you go back to you had 3 maps
Yes.
up there. There was a map on the left that I had a question about. Yeah, that one there. And because I'm looking, right now I'm sorry, the map on the right side with the blue lines shows the current brick streets, is that correct?
Brick sidewalks.
Brick sidewalks, okay. I'm looking at a map on the last page also of our agenda, and I noticed there's a section, an area called Section A and B, both at the, where you have the blue lines next to 4th Street, like between 4th and 5th Street in the north.
Yes.
And then also there's an area next to Oread, I think, or next to, between 7th and 8th and 9th.
Yes.
There's blue lines there, and then there's another blue line, kind of a diagonal going to the, is that the, on Oread Avenue, is that going to campus? I'm not sure, I wasn't sure. Anyway, my question is, are those 3 areas going to be added to the permissive map, since they have brick sidewalks?
So I believe the map you're referencing was a part of public comment. That was not a part of what staff is recommending, but that can be a consideration or a discussion we have as a group. So this body can make a determination on how they want to recommend the policy move forward, and you could have a conditional piece of that recommendation that says you feel the map should change in one way or another.
Right, I mean, because that's what I would, I mean, when it comes time for a motion, that's a motion I would like to make, is to add those 3 sections, because they already have brick sidewalks, and the policy says ultimately if you have a brick sidewalk, you know, then and it's, you know.
You want to add them to what?
To the permissible map. Those sections marked off there.
Well, let's take some public comment,
Please,
and then
yeah.
we'll discuss. Thank you, Cece.
Absolutely. Dennis, do you have something you wanted pulled up?
If we can share the screen.
I believe it is
Oh, yeah, there it
screen
is.
sharing. Oh, no. Stop share, I'll reshare.
There's 3 of them right here. She's showing the map on the right. It shows blue lines outside of the permissible map.
Okay, Dennis Brown from the Lawrence Preservation Alliance Board. I'll take a moment real quick. After this agenda item, I have to head home, and I believe this is the last HRC meeting for Jay and Bonnie and Jody and 3 great Historic Resources Commissioners who've put in a lot of work over the years and done their homework, and I just want to offer my personal appreciation and congratulations to all 3 of you. And with that, I'll go to the agenda item at hand, and I know LPA had 4 or 5 issues that we expressed at the last meeting, and we feel like most of those have been resolved. We're pretty happy with the process and with where the policy is right now. It's been a ton of work for a lot of people. CC has done a fantastic job of working with all the stakeholders and really coordinating and combining and coming up with something where the different stakeholders look at it and go, oh yeah, it looks pretty good. So thank you, great job. Who knows what they'll put you on next? Hopefully it's not this hard. So we're just down to where, you know, we're in a situation where the HRC is being asked to approve the document or as is, or approve it with a condition of a possible change. And if you did that, you'd be in the same boat as the multimodal folks. They had a condition. HRC could have a condition. The steering committees had their say, and the city commission will work it all out. If you're not going to be able to make a condition, and that'll be accepted. But for HRC, this is the group to really analyze the permissive map. that being said, we do realize that the permissive map has undergone several changes since the steering committee started their work. And each time, of course, each time it changed, the area of the permissive map got bigger. And the city is being very generous in intending to continue with the city participation in the project too. So where LPA might say, well, we'd like to make the map quite a bit bigger, we don't think that's the responsible thing to do, and we think we're in a situation now where tweaks here and there would be more likely to pass muster down the road than some big thing that we might go home and feel great about tonight, but in reality probably wouldn't happen. So in that spirit, LPA is focusing on two small areas, one in Old West and one in Pinckney. And our hope would be that the HRC would create a condition that you would be recommending the approval of adding both A portions and both B portions to the permissive map. The A and the B is pretty much here just for you guys, because if you wouldn't want to go as far as what is listed in B, we really think you should at least consider A. And our reasons are, if you look at both little parcels of A, they're surrounded on three sides by areas of the map that are permissible. So that's kind of an awkward situation for those folks to be in. It wouldn't be adding very many properties, but it would square up the lines. I'm sure city staff several years from now would appreciate that, instead of having to tell all the homeowners in a particular area or block, well, we're not going to participate if you choose brick. Yeah, across the street and behind the alley and down the block will help those folks. It would just seem a better policy to add in the areas marked A. But B, I think we can make a good case for that too. You know, it's folks who have dealt with historic districts know that there's a lot of different reasons why a boundary of a historic district is chosen. And probably it's not that, well, the historic houses are all over here, and then over here there's not. There were more reasons than that. So-and-so didn't want to get into the district. So-and-so's property wasn't 50 years old. There's a lot of different reasons. So the folks that are kind of hemmed in by historic districts on three sides, those properties have a lot of the same characteristics and provide the same context and feel that properties in those districts do. So this policy should recognize that. Also, on the Old West portion, 8th Street is a brick street. So it's kind of more reason to include that. So we would hope that tonight you will go ahead and make a motion to include the entire A and B areas that we've provided for you on this map in the permissive area. Both sides of 8th Street, both sides of 7th Street, both sides of Arkansas, and in Pinckney, both sides of Alabama. Mm-hmm. And we'll see what the City Commission says. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. I know it's kind of difficult to visualize some of this stuff, but otherwise I'll sit down and listen to what you have to say.
Thank you, Dennis.
Okay.
Well, I appreciate the revisions. Thank you to the committee for listening to all of the comments and putting in all that you have. I particularly wanted to call out the retention of the stone sidewalks and then permitting brick sidewalks where they exist to be maintained and replaced with brick if they need to be replaced, which is how I read it. which I think is great. And I love the comment from multimodal, yeah, about allowing brick sidewalks if they're constructed in, to standards, PROAG standards, to be able to be installed anywhere. Also love that. So the areas called out with the A and the B on the map that was included with comment, I walked down 7th Street on Saturday and noticed a lot of brick streets, and I believe they were in this area, some of them at least. And I think it makes a lot of sense what is presented in the comment here. And I think right now we are at a point where we're trying to create a standard and a policy and a funding mechanism for areas that are historic, whether they're in districts currently or will be in districts in the future. It needs to be flexible to include those. So what do we do now, and how often do we update this, is my question to the committee, is how does this happen? Like if a new district is installed tomorrow, but you publish the map today,
Then we'll do an amendment tomorrow. That's a good question. In the policy, trying to remember which section of it, but it speaks to should any, it's a shall statement. Should additional historic districts or overlay zoning districts be approved by the governing body where an existing brick sidewalks are character defining, they shall be added to the brick sidewalk permissive map. So this is an administrative policy, which is why it goes to multiple bodies for consideration, and then the city commission for consideration, and ultimately is approved by the city manager. Because of that nature, administrative policies are a bit more flexible than, say, the land development code that has to go through many more steps in order to have revisions or additions. And so with an administrative policy, if changes happen, if things in this policy don't work, the city manager is able to make the decision that an edit needs to happen, and then it can. If it's a big enough edit, we may get together another subcommittee and sort of have those grander discussions, because ultimately this document came out of public comment and public values, and we want to retain that, but that's how those sort of smaller changes can happen.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Well, I had a question about when someone is notified. We asked last time about the length of time that people had to respond. Mm-hmm. So what is the length of time? And
so we can speak to the sidewalk improvement program and how that's worked in the past. Since the ADA transition plan was approved just last month, we're starting with a new process. Jake Baldwin is the engineer who works for the city, who was the primary manager of the sidewalk improvement program. Sorry to put you on the spot, Jake, but after we had our last meeting, I asked him about the process, and he sort of spoke to, Jake, do you want to take it, or do you want me to give it my best shot?
So I think statutorily we have to give people 30 days, but in the practice of the sidewalk improvement program, we've used 60 days. We've been kind of more generous in the time because, we know people need that extra time to do these types of repairs.
okay.
And that 60 days I understood to be the minimum time frame. So ultimately, if someone is notified of their sidewalk being out of compliance, they're given a letter that says you have a minimum of 60 days to make contact with the city. It's not 60 days to fix the entire issue. It's just to notify sort of what avenue you want to go down. Do you want the city to do it? Do you want yourself, the self-repair, to do it? And then you have until ultimately that installation team sort of gets to your block, gets to your property to make those changes or have that conversation.
Okay. Well, and so what are staff's thoughts about the adding A and B to the map? Is it partially like budgetary funding or other considerations?
So the subcommittee had a long conversation about this, and it wasn't a unanimous decision of the map that we have today. There were some folks who wanted to sort of join the A-marked idea of joining two areas that may otherwise be covered on three sides. And they opted ultimately not to do that because there is funding and budget consideration with this. If the city has said we will cost partner for these areas, and we know that brick costs more, that is burden that's primarily put on the city. It was also, I think, in an effort to utilize objective boundaries that are currently already found. So the boundaries of the original town site, the boundaries of historic districts weren't the subcommittee picking and choosing streets, and they tended to want to stray away from that. From a staff perspective, I and the staff working group thought the original town site was a great starting point. We recognize East Lawrence didn't have that historic district, and there's some concerns about how long that may take, and so utilizing the original town site felt like it accomplished a lot. We then felt comfortable that have some graphs of just how much brick sidewalk exists inside versus outside of the permissive area I can bring up if you'd like. But that was sort of how we came to that decision. Should this body recommend making that map larger, I can absolutely take that to City Commission. I just ask that you give me set boundaries, not just the idea of larger. So the A and B map gets you close to there if you wanted to utilize that.
Thank you.
One other question on the boundary. What were the thoughts on the inclusion of the areas owned by KU?
So KU was a part of the subcommittee, and they did not express interest in making that boundary larger. So without having that entity ask for it, I don't know that the subcommittee really considered that further.
But the subcommittee felt like it should be included because it is a historic district?
Correct, sorry. The historic districts, all historic districts are included in the map, including KU's. I thought you were speaking to the piece on Oread Avenue
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
that-
that is.
between the
angle.
two. They didn't talk about that one.
Yeah. I just don't think in all likelihood that KU would care if the city was willing to cost partner. I don't know. Maybe they would be, but.
Well, and I don't think we should. It's private property. Let them pay.
But they are a historic district.
Yes, they are. But they're, well, I won't go further.
Yes. Understood. Okay. Any other thoughts or questions for Cece, or discussions or motions or anything?
Well, I have a motion.
You have a motion?
Is it ready for motion, or do you?
I think so, unless, well, Will's thinking. I don't know, maybe.
I was thinking about what the specific boundaries would be were we to recommend that they expand the map into the A and B territories. I was trying to figure that out.
Yeah, I think it
Yeah. It's
follows Alabama up to 3rd and follows Michigan up to 7th.
Yep. And as Mr. Brown said, either side of Alabama and Arkansas on those edges. It would count for both sides of the streets, those streets. Because we don't have that, we don't have the three maps that you showed I don't think in this permissive, unless I'm missing something here. We've got,
Well, and I'm sorry, Cece, I have another question that just occurred to
okay, I
me.
can't find it.
So when this ultimately goes to the city manager, I'm assuming the city manager may be taking, budget and things in mind, and would then possibly tinker with the map more then as well? Or
My understanding is the city manager on administrative policies that the city commission sees tends to go pretty in line with the city commission. So should the city commission ask for that or ask for that to be explored, then I can imagine the city manager might, but it's unlikely a case where the city commission approves one thing and the city manager chooses something totally different.
Okay, thank you.
Are you ready?
I would like to make a motion that we add the small sections A and B on, that would, to the permissible map, so that the permissible map would include both sides of 3rd Street, Alabama Street, 7th Street, and Michigan Street.
Can I clarify, are you recommending approval of the policy with that conditional change?
Yes.
I second. So we have a motion by Commissioner Klein and a second by Chair Coleman. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I guess I'm an aye. Sorry, I was still thinking.
Okay. So we have 5 ayes and none opposed.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the second public hearing item. DR 22-00014.
Good evening, Commissioners. Lynn Braddock-Zollner, Historic Resources Administrator. This item is one that you may be familiar with. It is for new construction in the 1000 block, the east side of New Hampshire Street. We talked about the west side last month, so this is different. This is the project that was previously approved for the east side. And it is a certificate of approval and downtown design guidelines. When the applicant submitted the building permit for the project and staff was doing the historic review, the elevations and the building permit that were submitted did not match what the Historic Resources Commission had approved. Sometimes if there are simple changes, staff can approve those administratively, but the changes in this case were pretty significant and staff did not feel comfortable approving those changes administratively, so we've brought them to you this evening for review. Again, this is the vacant parcel here on the east side of New Hampshire Street and the 1000 block. The actual floor plan or site layout has not changed. As far as I know, it will still have the green space that you approved, so there's no change to that. It was just the elevations that had some changes. Just quickly, what you approved at your when you approved the project, wanting you to take note of a couple things that were mentioned in the cover memo for this item, those being the storefronts, this is what was approved, and then the different materials used to break up the large mass of the structure. This is showing the rear with the lap siding that was approved at the last meeting. And then looking at those ends, that north and south end, with the different materials. This is the new proposal. It might be a little clearer in your packet than on the screen. It's such a large building, it's hard to get it all on the screen and have it emphasized to really see. But if you'll notice, all of the upper stories are now brick. There's no change in material, although there is still some variation in the cornice. And then on the ground floor, the storefronts have changed, and there's more stone along that ground level on that primary or western elevation. And this is showing the east elevation with the lap siding. The only thing that the architect noted for this elevation was the changes in the window sizes on that ground level. And then this is showing the north, and this is the north elevation, showing the stone wrapping around and the changes in windows on this elevation. But then this whole upper area of the building becomes brick. And then again on that south elevation, this is all stone, the windows change, and then all of this is brick. And staff had some conversations with the applicant. One of the things that didn't really come through on the building permit was the changes and patterns of brickwork that were accenting the windows and giving some character to the facade. Those were not showing on the revised drawings, and the applicant is still working with their mason trying to price some of that out, and was not showing yet. And so they're not sure that they can do that. So with all of these changes, staff is recommending that this go back to the Architectural Review Committee, and there are a couple of ways that you can look at this. We now have the ability for you to approve something conditionally. So if you wanted to approve the project with the Architectural Review Committee, approving the final plans, giving the Architectural Review Committee some direction. You would need to give them direction. You could do that, or you could have it come back to the full commission next month to see what the ARC and the applicant worked out, if anything. So those are a couple of options available for you, and I would be happy to stand for any questions you might have.
I guess one of my questions is, well, two. One is a practical question on if we're going to have the same two architects serve on the architectural committee before the next HRC meeting with a new, with new commissioners.
Well, the terms for Commissioner Hawley ends August 31st. So if we have the meeting before the 31st, he would still be eligible to serve on that committee and go to that meeting.
Okay, because I wasn't sure if we were going to have like a different new architect who would be brand new and have to catch up to this particular project.
Well, if the meeting has to take place after September 1st, then that would be the case.
Right, okay, thank you.
Well, and I have a question about, I was wondering why the differences in trying to make each section kind of look different with some variety, why that can't be done with a different color brick.
We have had buildings in the past that have done it with brick or a change in material to stone. Probably the most successful is Hobbs Taylor Lofts, where they actually changed to the stone. But you could do it with different color bricks. I think the applicant, and they can speak to that, but I think it's their desire to have just one color.
Which raises my, again, along those lines, my other question. I'm very, very concerned about this project being right next to English Lutheran Church, which is stone, the limestone, and so that's why I am concerned about, I guess, colors from an aesthetic point of view, you know, of going with the pale I don't know what that's called, sandstone color versus the red brick is one of my big concerns.
Should we hear from the applicant?
Unless you have more questions for me.
Sorry.
I don't think that was a question.
It wasn't a question, I'm just,
I believe we've
Stating
exhausted
something.
our questions of you, Lynn, at this time. Is the applicant present?
Yes, this is Jason Dalton, the architect for the project. Regarding the color, the brick is a pale cream color. There are two colors. One's lighter, and then the accent brick is a little darker, kind of grayish tan color, probably more on the tan side. That goes around kind of the window bays. There's a border that goes around there. You can kind of see it if you guys are able to zoom in on any of the elevations or not. The original building had brick and then fiber cement panels were the inset portions on those elevations. And so our thought on this was brick would be a much more acceptable material facing the New Hampshire street, which is more of the downtown. And then we put that fiber cement on the backside, alley side, which is what we're calling the more residential side. Faces all the residential houses back on that side. As far as the actual materials go, it is kind of a conditional approval, and maybe Lynn can speak to that a little bit, that we're going to be submitting the final materials for approval. I think maybe that just gets, I don't know if that's a administrative approval, but we're in the middle of pulling all of the actual materials together so those can be submitted. The storefront glazing that changed was a part of the Penlofts. The Penlofts project was built a couple years ago over at 8th in Pennsylvania. And one of the complaints on those live works was that the glass was too big and too much light was coming in. So that was part of the reason for this last minute change on shrinking the width of the storefronts and showing more stone on that first floor, as Lynn pointed out. I don't know, that's the main reason for that one. Len mentioned the pattern underneath the windows, that we're still working with the mason on that. I do believe we'll get some sort of pattern in there, but when we get that sorted out a little better, we'll submit something so we don't have to go back and forth and pretend what that might or might not be. We originally submitted a herringbone style, and that's just something very difficult for a mason to put on a wall. So we're trying to work with them on finding something more suitable. I don't know, do you guys have any more questions or?
Yeah, just a clarification on the drawings that were submitted or in the packet, I guess. It seems that, if I'm reading it right, we had rendered drawings from last summer that were included in the packet, and then black and white elevation drawings from December in the packet. And I'm having trouble sorting out is it all one color of brick now, or is it two? Because I think you said two, but then I don't know where those apply.
Yeah, I'll say it's mostly one color, and it's essentially one brick that makes a soldier pattern, essentially, that goes up, makes a border around the windows. So each window bay has what we're calling brick 2 accent brick, and you can kind of see it there on that image. Let's see if I can sorry, I'm doing this on my phone, so we'll try and get that pulled up, that color image that you guys had up. Where'd it go? So the one color is the main body, and then it's got that accent border that goes around the windows. That's a a darker accent color. So I think in terms of what you're asking, there's not the two colors, like a darker tan and a lighter tan, offsetting each individual bay.
I understand. Thank you.
And Jason, I'm looking at that west facade, which basically has the same, this is a black and white rendering that shows the same color brick across the top. But you made a reference to brick being across the street. Well, what brick are you referring to? The whole Allen Press building will be demolished, and I can't, I'm not picturing any other brick on the other side of the street, facing the west side, or across from the west side.
I don't think I was making reference to anything across the street. I was saying that there would be brick on the New Hampshire side, on the west facade of this, and then on the east facade is a fiber cement panel.
Which is facing the residential side.
Maselli's is,
Correct.
yeah,
Oh, Maselli's is brick?
yeah.
Okay, I couldn't remember, that's what I'm asking.
And Chair Coleman, on the west elevation drawing, if you look on that top right-hand corner, that's where it calls out the second brick, just on that top line. Do you see right here?
It goes, if you go down just a little bit too, Lynn,
Right there.
it says brick 2 soldier.
And then,
So it goes around the borders of those windows as well. There's kind of 2 bands of that.
right there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and Mr. Dalton, this is Commissioner Johnson. It has on there that there's a stone sill under each window. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep.
I was wondering why, so in the original that was approved for the west side, there were the fiber cement panels that looked to be a different color, and I don't have any heartache with those being brick now. I think that's very nice. But I'm wondering why those areas where those cement panels were aren't a different color brick.
Yeah, the owner he liked it being all one color. So that's what we went with those accent bands. So that's what it is, or why.
Okay. And then even though the design guidelines do call out needing to have that variety, he still likes the one color?
Yeah, that's what he liked. We were taking the approach that the variety was in the step back and then the height of the parapet. So it's not one continuous flat facade all the way across, that there's variation in the depth of it.
Yeah, can you explain the setback of those steps and the height difference?
The step back, I believe, is 8 inches. So it's like every 22 feet, I believe, is roughly each bay. And then it steps back about 8 inches. And then the next one comes back out all the way down. And then the height of the facade or the parapet is just to help kind of accentuate that difference and make it look like it's pushed back a little bit further.
And what's the measurement there?
I'm going to say it's probably 8 inches as well, maybe a foot. I don't know if that is... I probably don't have that dimension on those elevations.
Course.
Yeah.
Which would be 2 2/3?
Yeah, a brick course, yeah, 2 2/3.
Okay. Okay.
And Commissioners, I failed to mention, and when you approved this project the last time, you did condition that approval on the ARC approving the final building materials instead of staff.
Well, I would like to be in the position to say that we could put a condition on this, that whatever the ARC says is okay. But the drawings we have now, with the lack of detail and some things still being up in the air, I kind of don't know that we're at that point, because I'm not sure that there's enough information there for us to give the ARC guidance on what we would want them to say yes to or no to. So
Yeah, I guess I would go back to the staff report and the parts of the downtown design guidelines that staff feels isn't reflected in this current design, is where I would start.
yeah. And I guess, Chair, you being on the ARC, I would wonder what your opinion is about how much information is here and how comfortable you would be with us leaving it up to the ARC.
Well,
And I'm sorry, I'm kind of putting you
Yeah.
on the spot there.
well, with the change in the commission, I'm unsure.
Yeah.
I would have been very confident.
Yeah. That's, I keep looking for a solution to where we can move this forward, but I'm kind of thinking that the plans need to be buttoned up and brought to the next HRC meeting.
I agree with you, Commissioner Johnson, that there's some loose ends here, and plus the transition of our commission. I'm still not clear about exactly what the ARC would do, or what direction we can give to the ARC. I agree with you.
May I add to what we're looking for approval on right now to keep things moving forward for construction?
Sure.
So that maybe the biggest thing is the size of the windows. The storefronts on the west facade. They are pouring footings and foundations right now. The slab will follow shortly, and then they'll start framing up the first floor. And it would be nice if we could know if the size of those storefronts being reduced to the size that we're showing right now would be acceptable. The windows on the back, we can maybe wait if you guys weren't comfortable with those, but being on the residential side, I don't feel like those need to be quite as tall as we were showing, and it gives the tenant more flexibility with their furniture to be able to move it around on the inside. I personally, I don't have any issues with those being shorter. So the framing on the first floor is kind of what may be more important right now than, the brick colors or the brick pattern or any of that.
Well, just, speaking for myself and not knowing whether this is doable or not, I'm fine with the changes to the storefronts. It actually adds more stone. And I think shortening those windows on the residential side is fine. But I don't know if we can sort of piecemeal approvals like that.
Is it possible to give recommendation to ARC to be able to approve that if we're able to go into there? If we can get into that before Commissioner Hawley is off of the commission or off of the ARC committee, and then we can keep this portion moving forward. We still have to submit materials for approval.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing to discuss on the storefront on that ground floor level is not only how much stone there is, but the alignment of the storefront with the windows above and how you're switching from glass to stone in the middle of a window that is above it. That I would appreciate his input on, and I would hope that we could get a meeting before the 31st, but I don't know his schedule. I'm not sure why where he is. We don't know till we know.
Who will be on the ARC if Commissioner Hawley is not available by the end of the month?
At next month's meeting, the Historic Resources Commission will appoint members to the ARC.
Is it possible to ask him to extend that part of his appointment until we get a new ARC member?
The commission, the way your bylaws are written is that you just have to have one commissioner on each subcommittee, so you could ask him, even if he's gone off and we've had a substitute architect on the ARC before.
Wonderful. Okay, so that's a possibility, if he's willing.
If he's willing.
Yes.
Well, I mean, here's my concern, which is if he's not available or he's not interested in substituting, we're talking about not choosing a new ARC composition until the middle of September, which means these folks there won't be another ARC meeting until end of September-ish. So the time frame for me, especially when they're in process, is a little lengthy. So I just want everybody to consider that.
Right.
Yes, I agree.
Putting a lot of eggs in Mr. Hawley's basket here.
Right, so tell me again one is okay, or you have to have two, and one has to be on the commission?
You can have just the one on there. It's not required to have two architects. That's just been the practice of the commission, is to have both the architects sit on the ARC. You have to have one historic resources commissioner on each subcommittee.
Yes, okay, I understand.
So is this turning into a subcommittee of one person? I mean,
Yeah, that would be.
Yeah,
be
that's what
practical about it.
That's what I'm wondering, yeah. And if you feel comfortable
I mean,
with
if he's
that.
not able to, yeah. Yeah, I think for me, it's the storefront area, not necessarily the amount of it, but the positioning of it, which I feel like we could work through that. I would love to see the brick patterns that you showed before. I know it's a cost issue. And I think what you've done on the alley side is just fine. Yeah, so it's really just that west facade.
I just have another question, Mr. Dalton. How much do you need to know to proceed? I mean, at what point does this create a standstill on what you're doing?
Realistically, they could proceed and framing out. I don't know. Maybe they would frame it out larger and then come back and infill if required. But it would be. I mean, they would have to build something at some point if we're not able to get moving, and then they'd have to go back and just essentially rip part of it out and rebuild it.
Well, another one of my concerns is just that with a new makeup of 4 members on the HRC next month, that they may look at it and, completely give a different opinion and send everybody back to the drawing board. So,
Well, I have a solution to consider if you don't mind.
I sure am open to a solution.
Okay, can we see the application again? What I'm thinking is that it makes more sense in just proportions of how buildings in the districts are built and the alignment of the kind of bays of windows coming down and touching the ground. If you actually reduce the storefront amount and move the window and storefront over to align with the window above it, if that would work in plan. then it would feel more in character with the district. Because we like alignment and symmetry and.
Right.
So you're saying make them even skinnier and line up each side of the inside of each window?
Yeah, and if you feel like that's not enough light, then there could be a more of a window without the door under the second bay. It looks like these are, I don't know what the dimension is there, but
And I think that's why staff was recommending this go to ARC, because when you start reducing that storefront, then you start getting into other guidelines about the ground floor having that
Yes.
commercial storefront.
Yeah, and that's why we need to
the
meet.
percentage of it. So that's why we were recommending ARC.
yeah, and if, I don't know, if you guys have faith in me, meeting as the ARC.
I guess, but again, my other concern, in addition to the storefront issue that staff raises, my other concern is how dark the brick is above the light stone below. It just feels like it overwhelms.
And you're looking at a black and white drawing.
Right, and that's why I don't know what the actual colors are.
Yeah, the
I don't-
colors he
you know, I would
described,
like
the
to see,
two
I would
are
rather
much
see
closer.
that better, as opposed to what we're looking at right now, because it looks top-heavy right now to me. That's just an aesthetic opinion.
Okay.
Well, if the chair feels confident in having enough information to proceed, then I would be comfortable making a motion that we send this to ARC. And if ARC approves, then they can move forward. I don't know if we're ready for that motion or not.
Would you like the ARC to also consider different colors of brick, or is it okay for the commission that all of this is one color with just the accent? Because that was one of the things that staff brought up in the memo, was having some change in sections so that you break up that overall mass.
That's my concern.
Yeah, can we give the ARC direction to attend to staff's comments?
Yes.
Because I too am a little, I understand the owner wanting to have all one color, but what we approved originally was different, and the guidelines do call for them to be different.
Yep.
Sounds like we're ready for that motion.
Okay, well, I would move, am I saying approval? I would move that this application go to the ARC with direction to address the comments from staff in this report in meeting the design guidelines. And if the ARC is comfortable with the changes, that the project would proceed. Is that good enough?
I think you need to use the word approval in your
Approval.
motion.
Okay.
That the
If the
commission
ARC
approves it with that condition.
The commission approves it with the condition that the ARC approves it, keeping in mind staff comments and the design guidelines.
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay.
Does anyone want a second? I don't feel like I should second.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Commissioner Meyer. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm going to oppose just because there's so many loose ends, unknowns.
Thank you. Motion passes 4-1. And Jason, let's make that meeting as soon as possible.
Sounds great. Do I do that with Lynn?
What was that?
Yes, I will send
Or
dates
do
to
I-
everyone tomorrow.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, moving on down the agenda, we are public comment item number 3, which is HRC 24-1014.
So this is 1347 Tennessee Street. You saw this back in June and referred it to the Architectural Review Committee. It is new construction on a vacant lot. It is located in the Oread Neighborhood Design Overlay District and subject to the Oread Neighborhood Design Guidelines. This is the project location here in this vacant lot. And then just quickly, what you looked at that June meeting, this is the site plan for the proposed new construction, and that has not changed. Only the facade of the building has changed. This was the elevations. I'll quickly go through these that were submitted with the original application. You'll notice that stone from the ground to the first floor, the window sizes. This is one of the side elevations, and then along 14th Street, and then the rear elevation. The applicant worked with the ARC, and I'll let Chair Coleman talk a little bit about what all the revisions were, but this is what has been submitted as the revised project. You'll notice a change in the ground level material. It's still stone mainly, but it does have these brick areas to break that up some. The window sizes are all appropriate, and this is the board and batten instead of metal panels. And there's one more, and then this shows that north elevation. And I will let Chair Coleman talk about some of the Architectural Review Committee comments.
Okay, we talked about 4 things. One was why not build up to the lot line, which is one of the standards, and it has a weird lot line. It's not a square, exactly square plat, and to build to the lot line then would bring it out further than any other building on that street. So we felt like what they've done here is appropriate in terms of that. There was in the previous submission up where it says 1347 Tennessee, there was a large white square, very large. And so they've, I don't know what the intent of that square was, but I think it was a part under development maybe. And so now you can see what it became, which I think is much more appropriate with the inset areas, inset panel areas that align with the open spaces below. And then there was the discussion of the water table. Usually we see a water table down or bulkhead, down at the ground floor windowsills or maybe in that zone. And for this building, it didn't make sense to put it there because of how the site slopes up. You're walking up a hill there. It's and the building is sunk into the hill, and so when they showed that option, it just it didn't do anything. Your eye didn't carry that around the building because the ground interrupted it. So we thought it might be more successful to actually bring it up higher so that it was kind of in that zone when you're up on the high side of the site and not so much at the front door, especially since it's very narrow. We considered the apartment building next door, which is completely brick, and felt like this kind of application with the brick coming down on that entry piece and on the corners and the two elements on the side, going from the cornice all the way down to the ground, was more consistent and in keeping with the character of the neighborhood and that brick apartment building. I believe that is it.
I just want to note that the picture of the new rendering in the packet is
It's
very different than what we're looking at here.
Yeah,
It looks-
exactly.
It looks extremely tall and very skinny and
It was
not
stretched or
Yeah, and that's,
it's stretched out. So if anybody
It
is
looks like
reviewing
when
this.
when it got converted for the packet, it
Right.
altered the scale.
yeah,
Okay,
thank you
so I
for
just-
showing the actual.
For anybody watching at home, I just want them to say that this is not an accurate representation of what's in the packet
Yeah.
of the scale.
yeah. So I feel like all these changes that they've made and they're showing here on the screen, not in the packet, are consistent with our discussions and I think they're going to be a great addition to that neighborhood. It fills the corner nicely. But is the applicant present? Do you want to say anything?
Yes, I am. Hello. Thank you for your comments, and we agree. We think it'll be a good fit, and we're happy with the design.
Thank you. Any discussion from commissioners?
It looks very good. Thank you, ARC. And the applicant for doing what the ARC says.
Well, it was a fine effort.
Yeah.
My son just moved into a house a block to the west of here. So how fast are we building this?
I think it started.
We will see. They haven't started on the corner yet, but they're always as fast as possible. So, yes, we'll see.
Are we ready for a motion then?
I think so. Would you like to make a motion? Go ahead.
I'll go ahead and do it. I would move that we find that the proposed project meets the development and design standards and the Oread neighborhood design guidelines for the Oread Neighborhood Design Overlay District.
Second.
Wonderful. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? None opposed. Thank you, and good luck with your
Good
project.
luck. Thank you for your patience and waiting.
Thank you all very much. Have a good one.
All right, moving on to the fourth item on the public hearing agenda, HRC 241019.
Okay, thank you, and good evening, Commissioners. This next item before you is for a proposed remodel and addition located at 1336 Kentucky Street. The proposed project is in District 3 of the Oread Neighborhood Design Overlay District and requires review for conformance with the Oread Neighborhood Design Guidelines. On screen is an aerial map showing the location of the proposed project, outlined in light blue at the center. For projects within District 3, the neighborhood-wide design guidelines in Chapter 4 are applied. This is a view of the front east primary elevation of the existing structure on the property. And then this is the proposed site plan for the property. The proposed project would include demolishing and replacing the existing stone foundation of the original structure. The existing structure and new addition would both have a cast-in-place concrete foundation and basement. Portions of the structure that are not considered to be original to the structure would be demolished on the east end and southwest corner of the building. A second-story addition is proposed over the single-story rear of the existing structure. The area of that second-story addition is highlighted in blue on the site plan. Here on the north side of the structure, in this dappled gray area, you can see where a small portion of the first story of the existing structure would project out from below the new second-story addition. And then a full two-story addition, which is highlighted in orange on the site plan, would be located off the east end of the existing structure and the new second-story addition. The proposed addition would be its own separate dwelling unit, making this a two-dwelling unit structure. A partially covered rear-facing porch would provide access to the rear or to the new addition, shown here in red. A small uncovered deck with stairs would provide rear access to the front unit on the south side of the structure, also in red. And then the existing front porch would be replaced with a larger wraparound front porch, which you can see here again in red. Then I'll quickly walk through several photos of the existing structure, starting again at the front. This is looking towards the front northwest corner of the structure. This is looking more directly at the north elevation, where you can better see the single-story rear of the structure, which is where the second-story addition would be proposed above. This is looking at the rear northeast corner of the building. The small addition on the east end of the structure would be demolished with the proposed project. And then the two-story addition would be constructed off the east end of the structure. This is looking at the south elevation of the structure. This existing wood deck would be demolished and replaced with a much smaller deck to maintain the access point here on the structure. And then again, another view of the front, but this time looking towards the southwest corner of the structure. A small portion of the front of this one-story portion of the building here would be demolished with the project so that it's recessed from the front wall plane of the structure. And then that area where it's recessed would then be where the new front porch would wrap around. This is the proposed front west elevation of the structure. The area that's highlighted in red would be the portions of the addition visible from the front. The second-story addition here would have a gable roof crossing the gable roof of the existing structure, and then the two-story addition that's further to the rear. The proposed height of the addition would be about 1.5 feet taller than the existing structure, which you can see poking up here. The addition would use horizontal LP smart side smooth lap siding with a 5-inch reveal to match the existing structure. LP smart trim would be used to match the existing window and door trim profiles. Composition asphalt shingle tab shingles would be the primary roof covering, and then new Anderson 100 series single hung windows would be used throughout the structure, except where casement windows would be required to meet egress requirements. The new front porch would be a wood-framed covered porch with columns and stairs. This is the proposed north elevation, where again you can see the area of the new addition highlighted in red, and then also here where the ridge line of the roof would increase in height over the addition. You can also see that on the windows for the addition, that decorative trim would be used around those windows to match the decorative trim around the existing structure's windows. This is the proposed east elevation of the addition, which would face the alley. From this side, there understandably isn't much of the original structure that would be visible. While it isn't highlighted in red, this area would be all the new work for the addition, with the exception of this small area that's highlighted in green, which is the original structure. And then last, this is the proposed south elevation, which better shows the new wraparound front porch here, and then also a small deck that'll provide a rear entrance to the front unit, and then the rear-facing front porch for the new addition. The applicant also provided renderings, which are included in the packet. These are looking at each side of the structure from the front. And then again, looking at each side of the structure from the rear. The proposed project meets many of the guidelines, but overall, the addition is large and overwhelming to the original structure. Staff does believe the proposed location and scale of the addition help to mitigate its height and mass, but the proposed project still doesn't fully meet the guidelines for new additions. Based on staff's review, the proposed project does not meet the Oread neighborhood design guidelines, so staff's recommendation is for denial of the project. I do want to share that the plans before you this evening were not the original plans that were submitted by the applicant. Staff shared review comments and key concerns for the original project with the applicant, and they did take the opportunity to submit revised plans prior to tonight's agenda packet being published. To avoid any confusion, I won't go into detail about what all those changes were, but the revised plans that were submitted and which are before you this evening did address many of staff's comments, which brought the proposed project closer into conformance with the guidelines. This project is not for a listed property, and the proposed project would allow for increased density in a district that is characterized as having medium density. While the project does not meet all of the applicable guidelines needed for staff's approval, the Historic Resources Commission has more room for discretion to examine the whole situation and approve projects that do not meet the letter of the guidelines. And with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions. Yes.
Is there like a set wall that separates the old part of the home with the new addition? Or is there access between the two sides?
My understanding is that they would be completely separate units.
With walls?
Right.
With a set wall between the two?
Correct. I don't believe there would be any access between the two.
Okay.
There are floor plans in the packet as well, which should help show that delineation between floors.
And can I ask, what was the discussion about the roof on the back part, the peak being taller than the original house?
So that is one of the guidelines that the project still doesn't meet, which is that additions that are taller than the original structure should be subordinate to that original structure. So again, this applicant did address many of the comments, the original or initial comments that staff provided. That is one of the few that still wasn't addressed.
Thank you. I think we'd like to hear from the applicant now.
Hi, I'm Jared Hoke of Hokeley Architects, and I'm the architect for this project. I'd first like to start off by thanking Avery for being very, very patient throughout this project. She did a really good job at working with us to make sure that we were able to actually capture some of the design changes that you're seeing now. So I greatly appreciate that. I guess to start off, since the question was asked about the height being 18 inches taller than the existing structure, this is truly an element of current code versus non-existent code from when this house was built. The current house does not, existing house does not meet current egress code for the window heights. It does not meet current egress path ceiling height. It doesn't even meet current ceiling height requirements at the sidewalls. So in order to do an addition that maintains the same floor to floor on the first floor and to meet code on the second floor without doing dormers, which would change the entire architectural expression of what the existing house is, we're required to have the roof be slightly taller. Our goal is to put that slightly taller portion directly behind the existing portion so that you can only really tell when looking at it, straight on a flat elevation drawing. The reality is that you'll never be able to perceive the difference when you're looking at it from the street in a perspective view setting. Our goals for the project were very similar to the neighboring structure that we designed at 1332 Kentucky, and there are many similarities between the two. I will say that we learned from our process working with the HRC and the ARC, and took the comments and the recommendations from the ARC in that project and directly applied them to this project. So the difference being we do not extend as far to the south on this project as we did in the previous project. We don't extend past the existing original first story portion of the house. We are building right on top of it. I know there are also some comments about the front porch being a wraparound porch. That is actually going back to what the 1905 Sanborn map is showing, that is alluding that there is a wraparound porch that goes from the front of the house, wrapping around to the existing one-story structure that we're now building on top of. So we're trying to bring that item back into the fold on this house. So our goal is to architecturally maintain the conditions of the existing house, but also restore what perhaps used to be there. I mean, that, of course, requires some guesstimating, but by doing some research on the existing homes throughout the neighborhood, we're able to take our best guess. I know there was also some comments on the 6x6 stoop to the south, which is in the side yard. That doesn't meet one of the requirements. The original deck that's there now is much larger and actually extends into the side yard, the required side yard setback. And then working with Avery, we whittled down what our original design was to become just a 6'6" access stoop. So that we understand that we may not be meeting that guideline, but we've made some steps to actually come closer to achieving what that guideline we think is trying to accomplish. And I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. So this is going from how many units to how many units?
It is going from basically 4 units to 5 units. So it's an existing 4-bedroom home.
So it would be 1 unit to 2 units?
Yeah. 1 unit to 2 units.
But how many bedrooms in each side?
One unit has 2 and the other has 3. I don't have the plan printed out here.
It looks like they both have 3 small bedrooms. Well, one of them's labeled a rec room in the front.
Yeah, that's what I noticed, a rec room, so that's why I was wondering about bedrooms.
It looks like the addition would have 3 bedrooms, labeled bedrooms, and then the existing structure would have 2 labeled bedrooms.
Does the basement have bedrooms with the egress windows? Sorry, I can't.
No, the basement doesn't have bedrooms.
Okay.
But since they are habitable space, they're required to have egress windows.
Well, I'm appreciative of the retaining the building, the house, and looking at the Sanborn maps and trying to discern what elements have been lost that could be recreated, because you can tell by looking at it that it doesn't look quite tidy enough to be all original.
No, and one of the pieces that bothers me is that the addition to the south, the one-story addition to the south, the front wall is aligned with the front wall of the existing two-story, which, I mean, that doesn't meet the guidelines, and it's just not what is typically done when doing an addition. So, we're actually tearing off that front wall to set it back to kind of restore what it should have been historically.
Are you keeping the brick sidewalk and the brick, I guess, approach to the front, to the patio?
I don't know. We haven't discussed that with the owner.
Oh, and this whole conversation about bricks we've had tonight, I just wanted to point out.
No, I know.
They're important.
There's a brick sidewalk and a brick walkway up to the front door, so.
Yeah, I think that I'm trying to get back to, I lost my page. The design of the addition, the elements of the design of the addition, I think you have matched the character of the original house. And I think that in context of that, when you're looking at all the context, all the historic buildings on the street, because not all the buildings are historic. You have several multifamily units and newer construction pieces, but I think you've made good, smart decisions in keeping with that character. The addition height is bothersome when you look at it on elevation, just on the straight elevation, and doesn't technically meet the standards of the addition. Should be lower and less, should not be imposing or overshadow the original house. So that's the only part that I'm a little bit hung up on, is the technical meeting of the standard, because I know when you're on the sidewalk or on the street or even across the street and you're looking at the finished product, your eye won't see far back enough on that roof line to see the addition pop up, but when you're down the road and looking at the side of it, I think you might. So it just seems like there should be a better detail of how the two roofs meet, and but I also understand completely that the existing house doesn't meet code and the ceiling heights are too short, and you just can't build a new one to meet that. So that leaves you with the decision of, do you build a one-story addition? I mean, that's really the only option, because you can't have a two-story that is shorter or even the same height as the original.
Or you can't necessarily have a two-story that has a shallower or different roof slope. And if you remember, in the neighboring property, when we went through the ARC, I actually brought both of the options you just mentioned, a two-story with a shallower roof slope and a one-story, and neither of them were found to be an improvement over the original design.
Right.
So
They were not. They I feel like did not meet the guidelines in other ways.
Correct.
Because they just destroyed the character. Yes. Yes, it looks very similar to the one next door.
Yeah.
That is approved and moving forward, right?
Yes.
So, because of all that, I don't feel that the strict interpretation of the guideline, the height difference of the new addition to the original house should be an impediment to us approving it. But that's my position as having more knowledge about what we talked about with the other one next door. I am curious to know what you all think.
I agree that the wraparound porch is an improvement. And, you know, aside from that little peeking up, the house will look like that this is an addition that was done back in the day. So I think it fits in that you could see someone, you know, years ago wanting to expand this house, then this is how they would expand it. So I think the massing actually is okay, particularly in the context of this area where there are so many houses that started out one thing and are now larger, or we've got larger small apartment complexes up and down that street. So actually think this is pretty good, and I wish there was something we could do about that little peak, but I do think you won't notice it, really. So that's my opinion.
Thank you.
And what is the purpose of a rec room? I mean, I know the purpose, but why include it?
For college rentals, it's a pretty big amenity. So that's a place for ping pong, for beer pong, for other activities.
So that's where we've gotten to, huh?
Well, and just remember, wraparound porches aren't always designed in this neighborhood to be historically accurate as much as like to sit out on the porch and partake. I say this as having two sons who go to KU, so.
I wanted to keep it as a nice, welcoming neighborhood amenity. You just drag it.
I'm sorry, I'm the realist here, so.
Okay, in this last meeting of this commission, would I have a revolt if I made a motion to approve?
I would second that motion.
You'll have a vote. I don't know about a revolt.
So are you moving to approve the proposed project and finding that it does meet the Oread neighborhood design guidelines for the Oread neighborhood overlay district?
I'm considering it,
Oh,
but I'm considering how to word that because there are elements that don't meet, but the commission can decide to approve projects based on the intent and not each individual item.
And that's why I'm leaning towards agreeing with staff about laying out all those reasons on where it does not meet the Oread guidelines. You know, each of those, I was paying close attention to each of those red X's.
And then so denying, you would vote to deny?
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
I don't know that you even need to go into that much detail. I mean, I think you could note that it doesn't meet as a staff report notes, it doesn't meet the letter of the guidelines, but it meets a lot of the applicable guidelines.
Considering existing building code.
Correct.
Okay.
Typically, your motion would be that you find that the proposed project meets the intent of the Oread Neighborhood Design Guidelines for the Oread Neighborhood Overlay District and approve the project as compatible with its existing conditions.
Okay. Well, I move to find that the proposed project meets the intent of the Oread Neighborhood Design Guidelines for the Oread Neighborhood Overlay District. And what did you say the second part?
And is compatible.
And is compatible with the surrounding neighborhood.
I second that.
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay?
So we have the motion passing 4-1. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, and speaking of the staff report where it had the X's and the check marks, that was great. Thank you.
Yeah,
And that's showing our new guidelines with the drawings.
it was very helpful.
Very nice.
Yes, it was. Okay. So we are done with public hearing items. Are there any miscellaneous?
Staff has no miscellaneous items, but Commissioner Klein submitted a letter that's under your miscellaneous items.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Klein. And I believe at the beginning of the meeting, we talked about historic markers and a process for discussing, or a process for determining the design or size of the historic marker.
Yeah, there's as Administrator Zollner told me this afternoon that, again, just to review, that the Dowdell Rice Committee met on July 22, so that will be coming back to us, I believe you said at the September meeting?
No, they are meeting again. They're working
meeting
on
again.
text right now.
Okay, so it will come to us later. And the separate historic marker committee is meeting again on September 27, I believe, is what you said?
I will have to look up the date. I do not have that. I think it's September 9th, but hold on just a second. I can. September 3rd.
September 3rd, okay, great. So is it possible we might be, that the HRC might be looking at the committee, the Historic Marker Committee's recommendations for our September meeting, mid-September?
It depends on how that meeting goes, how much
Sure.
changes they're making, what they're requesting staff research. A lot of people were doing a lot of different things on that committee to come back and discuss, so.
Okay. And then the first question that I asked was about when the work plan meeting would be held with the HRC?
And we obviously hadn't done anything with that since your last meeting, knowing that we would have a new Historic Resources Commission. And so once that commission takes their seats in September, then we will do training with them. And then hopefully maybe in October, we can do a work plan session.
'Cause I just keep thinking there's going to be a big learning curve as I experienced, with new commissioners. But I just think it's really important that we have a work planning session. It's been stalled for a really long time, and I would really like to have it prioritized. So.
And to specifically discuss the survey?
Priorities of what we feel are important according to Chapter 22. So it includes surveys, and one of my priorities, as I talked about a year ago, would be to expand the survey of East Lawrence. But there's other, areas as well that I think we need to discuss.
I mean, at a work plan meeting, I mean, is that to brainstorm ideas? I mean, this could be an agenda item, couldn't it?
Right.
I mean, if you're talking about more than just the new survey for the remaining areas of East Lawrence, I mean, Lynn, what does it take to get that done? I mean, it's not like the HRC members go out and survey the neighborhood.
No, typically what we've done in the past is apply for certified local government, using our CLG status, apply for historic preservation fund grants. I know we talked in the planning meeting about how to prioritize projects that we would like to see moving forward, and so staff has that information, and we could put that on your October agenda for discussion, and then if you want to look at other things and talk about it, then we could do that, or we can set aside a separate meeting again, whichever the commission prefers.
Yes, and during that training and planning session, we did talk in depth about several things, where the funds come from for National Register districts and educational programs, and how there's a match for in-kind hours and staff and volunteers, and we had a planning for the future part, and talked about what areas of town have not yet been surveyed, and creating a priority map in partnership with LPA, how we can partner with KU and their new Masters of Historic Preservation program for surveys and nominations. So then I think what's next is, the steps that need to happen, which ones are in the works, which ones, what does it look like? What's the guideline? Where does that live? How do we not forget?
Well, and again, with new commissioners, there'll be new discussions as well, in addition to what we talked about. Because I was looking for the minutes for that meeting, and I couldn't find the posted anywhere online, because I wanted to refresh my memory, of the three of us who talked about, ideas at that meeting. Another additional idea too is getting Grover Barn on the state register, because I know that building is in need of structural repair, and getting on the state register would really help them get grants for that. So again, lots of topics, that could come up with new commissioners.
So the plan is the new commission starts next month, and then there's a training session and planning session attached to that training session, or just training session for them?
We can look at, depending on when they get their training, because the primary goal of this body is to review certificates of approval and state law review and design reviews, if you will. Mm-hmm. So everything else is lagniappe, even though it's really important. So we need to get the new commission trained on the Secretary of the Interior standards, the guidelines in Chapter 22, and the design guidelines for our different overlay districts. So that has to come first. Mm-hmm. If we can get that done before October, then there's a possibility of doing some of this planning discussion at the October meeting. When they come on board, they may want to choose to have a separate session for a planning meeting like y'all have done before. It's really kind of going to be up to that commission once you have your new commission to kind of figure out where things fall into place.
Okay, that makes sense. And that first commission meeting, are we electing a new chair? Since it's a new
We will
commission?
elect a chair and a vice
ARC?
chair, appoint to the ARC. Yes.
Perfect. Any other things? I don't know.
The city commission adopted meeting procedures, so we won't be using Robert's Rules of Order anymore. There's a specific meeting procedure that I'll work with the chair and the commission on, as far as motions in the floor and things of that nature. So that there's a lot of training that's going to happen in September and October, so the planning piece may have to get bumped a little bit.
Okay, I understand. Do you understand?
Yeah, I'm freaking out.
Don't freak out yet.
Sounds like people here who will be on the HRC are not interested in being the chair.
I just wanted to know if I'm coming into that meeting as the chair or if we
Yeah.
first
Or
order of
until
business.
Someone else is,
But I'm not on the commission anymore.
oh.
I mean, they've dissolved all of our,
Oh, right.
I don't understand this whole process, why
Oh,
we.
actually, that's a good question. If everybody
Right,
got
that-
reappointed, then who's
That's what
the
I'm
chair?
saying, there's a whole new world happening here.
The beginning of the September meeting, the commission will vote on a chair for the commission.
Right, but who's leading the meeting?
Staff will lead the meeting until a chair is appointed,
Okay,
and then
thank
the
you.
chair will lead the meeting.
Okay.
It will be the first order of business.
Oh,
All
there you
right.
go.
Sounds like fun. Well, as the last meeting of this commission, thank you all.
Yes, thank you, everybody.
All right, thanks,
Yeah.
everybody.
And I'm sorry that you aren't Commissioner Johnson and Meyer,
Yes,
Going to
thank you for all your
continue.
service.
but
So I'll
yes,
have to tune in next month to see how this goes, so.
it's going to be fun. All right, we're adjourned.